Hi, welcome to Musicians on the Record, the show where we bring you the musician's story. I'm David Ward and really excited today. This guy has a lot of stuff going on. My next guest is an award-winning producer, engineer, music technologist. I want to know what that even is, and publisher of Modern Drummer magazine. His latest book, which I want to talk all about, is called Crash: The World's Greatest Drum Kits from a Piece to Peart to Van Halen. David Frangioni is on the show today. Welcome, David.
Thank you. Great to be here. Hello, everyone.
So I would love to start with this new book called Crash. I've seen, is it tied to this museum as well that you've got in Florida?
Well, it's tied to my nonprofit in that we give proceeds from the book to the nonprofit, and it's tied in the sense that the drum kits in the book a lot of them are on display in the museum that you're referring to, but it's a standalone book. I made sure that I wrote and created a book that would stand the test of time, that could be around for 100 years, and it would still be a great read. I wanted to make sure it was filled with pictures, so if you didn't want to get into the details in the text, you could still very much enjoy the book visually, and it was a great coffee table book. I wanted to make sure that we covered all of their different elements of drumming and drum sets that I was passionate about. And we did that. I was really proud of how the book came out. It's a book that I like to read myself and look through. And if you're into drum sets, if you're into rock drumming, jazz drumming, collecting, this book is in all of those lanes, and it's really enjoyable. It's done really, really well. It's still going strong. And everybody that gets the book reaches out to me, and a lot of the people have reached out and said consistently, we're really enjoying this. And it's something that never leaves our coffee table, and it's a point of, discussion and enjoyment for our guests and our family. And that's why you make the book.
Right. No question. And so who is in the book, David? Can you give us a glimpse of what kind of drum sets are we talking about here?
Well, we have, of course, right from the cover, Carl Palmer, my inspiration and favorite drummer. His stainless steel kit is on the cover, which is he had custom made, one of one, by British Steel in 73. Played it with ELP through all of those years, brain salad surgery tour on. Then there's Alex Van Halen, Neil Peart, as you said, Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson, Carmine Appice, Jason Bonham, Eric Singer, who also wrote the Afterword, and just Todd Zuckerman, Tommy Clufetos, Black Sabbath, and just, one amazing drummer after the next. And the drum sets are such works of art to go through and to look at. Greg Bissonet's Eat 'Em and Smile kit from the first David Lee Roth tour, when Roth was going after Van Halen with a vengeance and put that all-star band together, and no expense spared. And that drum kit was so iconic. And, just a lot of Steve Gadd, and Vinnie Caliuta, Terry Bozzio, and we go on and on and on. It's just a lot of fun. If you love drums or drumming, got to check out Crash: The World's Greatest Drum Kits.
Yeah, I mean, this is a drummer's dream book here. How did this book even come about, David, where you got the idea for all of this and you went and photographed these, or some of these are also at your museum?
Well, the idea was a hybrid. I wrote two books, Clint Eastwood Icon and Clint Eastwood Icon Revised and Expanded Edition, published through Insight Editions. And in my dealings with them, the publisher, Raoul Goff, a visionary man, great, iconic guy in book publishing, we did these two books. And while we were working on the second one, the Revised and Expanded Icon, he said, do you have anything that you'd like to do as a book with music? And I gave him some ideas, because I only want to work on projects that I'm really passionate about and that I think would be something that I would want to read. And I figure if I'm into it and I create something that I think is quality and is unique, then maybe a lot of other people will feel the same way and they can enjoy it. So one of the ideas was the drum sets. I had this collection that I've been building, and it was a combination like personal scrapbook, because we have Joey Kraemer from Aerosmith, and of course I've worked with Aerosmith for over 25 years. And so we have, like part of my own journey and history and journey, Steve Smith. We have some Steve Smith kits in there. So we have a combination of artists with whom I've worked and gotten to know, and this is my personal scrapbook, and drums that I've collected because I want to make sure that they're kept historically intact forever, right? That they're preserved. And so that was my focus. And so Raul said, that's a great idea. Let's do it. We focused it around the kits that I had. I had enough of them that we thought we could produce a really quality book. That was the methodology behind who's in it. It's not because this is our favorite drummer as opposed to that one. These are the drummers we've collected the sets on, and we feel have significant drum sets that other people will enjoy looking at and reading about. And it worked. That when we put together the synopsis, it was very effective. So we went forward with it, and I asked Mark Weiss, world famous rock photographer, to photograph the kits at the museum, which he thankfully agreed to. And then we sourced some other photos from guys like Niels Lozauer and other great photographers for some of the stage shots, what we'll call the more vintage or live-based shots. So it's a combination of the drum sets from a collectible perspective and an up-close and personal perspective to pictures of the drummer himself playing that set at the time that the history was being made.
So obviously you are a drummer as well, and this is some of your passion.
My whole life.
Your whole life. Yeah. So I definitely want to talk a little bit about that too. But if my memory serves me, our mutual drum teacher, Dom Famularo, said with the museum, some of these kits are also playable. Is that right?
Many of them are.
Many of them.
I had the idea that I wanted to have the book so that people can go out, get the book, they'll have it forever. They can pass it down to their family. It's something that will outlive all of us in terms of our lives, but it will be much bigger because it will go on past a human lifetime. That's one of the beautiful things about a book to me, is it can create something that really brings value and enjoyment to people and resource, and it can go on and on and on, especially on a relevant subject like, either Clint Eastwood icon, who Clint is truly, his films and himself are truly iconic, and Crash, World's Greatest Drum Kits, in the case of music and drums and drumming. So I think these subjects last many lifetimes, and that was really the point behind it. And when I looked at the museum is a private entity that's based around my Frangioni Foundation. So if you go to frangionifoundation.com, you learn more about that. And we're trying to make a difference, helping youth, inspiring kids, giving them inspiration and giving them, guidance at a time when they need it most. And that's something that the museum is very effective for, because like we take the Todd Zuckerman kit, for instance. Todd himself can come in, give a master class, all at no cost to the end user, and really change somebody's life. Because as we know, moments, especially before the age of 20, and especially in our really early years, moments are what we take with us for the rest of our lives. So they're not just moments, right? As we get older, the moments get a little more unique and special because we've got so many of them, and they really have to stand out more and more and more. But as a kid, they're defining. And those moments are the ones that still to this day, I'll speak to somebody who's 75 years old and I'll ask them about, like, where did you develop that discipline? Or how did you come up with the principle of this or that? And they'll literally say to me, oh, well, my dad, when I was 8, told me this. And it's like, when you were 8. So, it's unbelievable. And so I think that the museum really is very, very important for that. And when we looked at, it's part of my nonprofit, and then we have the book, and we have, whatever programming that we do, curriculum within that. When I first launched it, I had the idea. I was not affiliated with Modern Drummer magazine. I was just a huge fan of the magazine. I've been reading it since 1977 when it came out, when it was launched. And what I ended up doing is I literally said, well, what if we made this the Modern Drummer Hall of Fame?
Mm. Wow.
And what if this was a place where, as part of the special occasion, all of the iconic drummers that each year get inducted into that Hall of Fame had an actual Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
So who would have ever thought that in 2019 I'm asked to be publisher of Modern Drummer magazine, and now it all kind of comes full circle. It's really amazing how everything fits together. But we've just got some incredible things we're doing for youth, and especially, I'd like to say, in drumming.
Right. So if I wanted to come to the museum and play Alex Van Halen's drum kit, or Peter Criss, is Peter Criss's drum set from there?
It is, yes.
Wow, man. Or Ringo. Do we have one of Ringo's kits? Mm-hmm. I could bash on those kits. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
We'll see.
Okay. Maybe. That's a maybe with me.
Yeah, you know, that's the whole idea, is that, you know, you can create these incredible memories and put together some really great programming and curriculum and help change people's lives, especially young people.
That's very cool. I love that you're doing that. And talk about Modern Drummer then, David. You loved the magazine so much you became the publisher. Now, does that mean you bought the company as well? What does that mean?
Well, in a form, I mean, I'm a significant partner. Isabel Spagnardi, Ron's wife, who the two of them started the magazine together. Ron passed in 2003, and Isabel has continued forging ahead. She's been the CEO and the president the whole time. And so they haven't had a publisher for a few years, and they really thought that to, you know, lead them into the 21st century and really evolve what's known as a very, very iconic brand in drumming, as you know, because you're a drummer. They really wanted to take my knowledge and understanding in what I'll say is technology and drumming, and combine that in a way where we can, you know, it's a very unique blend, right? If we take my career and we say, okay, started out as a drummer, he's always been passionate about the drums, but I've made my living from technology, business, sound, etc. I never could have imagined that it would have come full circle and would have ended up being something that all of that experience would help Modern Drummer, kind of that blend of experience, help Modern Drummer be the #1 drum resource in the world for drummers, which we are, and we got to keep working really hard at building on that. It's a big responsibility, and it's something I'm very passionate about, and I know all the drummers out there really count on Modern Drummer and want it to be something that is around for a long time to help them.
Right, absolutely, and a great magazine. I've got my subscription, just to let you know. And if a drummer is not subscribed to that, get that, because it offers a lot. What's some of your vision, if you can share any of that, David, of where you would like that to go, and how do you see? I mean, obviously, you're a specialist in the technology. How would you like to see that blended together with the magazine?
Well, first of all, thank you for being a subscriber. moderndrummer.com/subscribe is where everybody else can become a subscriber. And you're going to really be glad that you did, because to answer your question, we're doing a lot to put initiatives forward, both online and in print. So, for instance, to me, my view of print was that it has to have an educational component to it that really brings value on an ongoing basis, that you would want and actually need the print copy. Because I think print, for me, collecting the back issues, I don't know about you, but I love to keep the back issues, right? I got way too many old Modern Drummers that now a lot of the times I'll look at the archive we have. I'll know the issue by having the issue or having read it many years ago, but I'll look at it a lot online on our archive, our digital archive. We have every issue we've ever done up there. But I have all the issues, and I absolutely love it. And there are moments when I want to hold the magazine or have somebody sign it or whatever. But I thought, we need to be even bigger than that in what we're offering in print. I think print is still very important and applicable to say the least. I think drummers especially love holding the magazine and traveling with it, not having to pull out an iPad every time they want to read something. And I also think, just as importantly, that education is a really critical path to being a better drummer. So we're putting these ongoing educational curriculums together. So as you get each issue of the magazine, you're growing and you're following a class that would cost a lot more money to either do online or to have, buy lots of drum books.
Great.
So it's something that's really, really of high value. And you can write on it because it's print, and you can keep the issues and you can follow along with them. And then on the digital side, we have all kinds of exclusive digital content. We've got the 40 plus years of archives up there. We've got all the current issues come out digitally in a very unique way to read them. They're not just PDFs. And we have our Give the Drummer Some VIP contests, which have really been spectacular. Almost every month, it's probably it'll average out to about 10 times a year, but almost every month we give away a contest to a subscriber. And all you have to do to enter the contest and win is be a subscriber. So you get all the value, and then we're throwing on top of that as a thank you. You can join this contest every month, and you win free tickets to see Aerosmith in their Vegas residency and stand next to the stage and meet the drummer, and we just gave away a cabin on the John Bon Jovi cruise around Barcelona.
Oh my God.
And the winner was the drum tech for a day on the cruise, and met John Bon Jovi and got a picture with him. And I mean, another winner went to Ringo Starr's private birthday party at Capitol Records, got a picture with Ringo. These are extraordinary contests by any standard.
Yeah, very sweet.
And that's what we're giving away to our subscribers. So I think we got a lot of really nice. I know they're all new things, but I also think they're really high quality. I think drummers, musicians are going to love it.
Sounds great. And you can clearly hear your passion around drumming in there, David. Can we talk a little bit about your story? As I was doing some of my research to talk with you, I thought it was very courageous, some of the story that you shared. I've been talking with musicians a lot about music and mental health, and sometimes that stuff comes from physical health issues. Can you talk a little bit about your passion for drums and where that came from, where that started?
Well, in my case, when I was 2 years old, I was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which is cancer of the eye. And they had to remove my right eye. And it was a very traumatic childhood. Now, what I got from that, there were some real blessings in what was, very difficult. First of all, they didn't know if I was going to live. So I make it through that. I end up with a prosthetic right eye. I never knew what it was like to see out of two eyes. I have no recollection of that. So I think that's a big deal, because when you have sight out of both eyes and then you lose sight in an eye, I think that's much harder than just never knowing anything but seeing out of one eye. I can tell you that going through the trauma of having my childhood be with the prosthetic, getting fitted for a prosthetic, having all of these different challenges, were very, very difficult. And it was sad, quite frankly, to go through this. I use music as healing, quite frankly. When you have a child that's going in and out of doctors all the time for years at that age, from 2 to 10, getting fitted for prosthetics and dealing with the anxiety that goes with that, and with the environments that you're in. It was very challenging. I didn't even realize how challenging it was. I just kind of put my head down and went forward. I had incredible support from my mom and dad. We had very little material means, but we had tremendous love and support with each other, and especially from them. And music and drumming just turned out to be, I started playing the drums when I was 2. Everybody says, how do you know you started playing when you were 2? It's because I found pictures from 2 years old, dated and photographed, that absolutely, it's my playing the drums. I have no idea how or why those drums got there. I wish I knew. And then as my childhood kept going, I got more and more into the drums. I didn't have a drum set for a while. I played on phone books and practice pads. And then I finally my parents got me a used drum kit after I showed them that I was serious, and I took drum lessons every Saturday at a local music center. And when they saw that I would practice and I would follow through, they got me a little Rogers pink champagne 4-piece drum kit. And it all started from there.
It's amazing. Yeah, and there's a great picture of you sort of coming out of a bass drum as a kid.
That's it. That's the one.
Yeah,
man, you do your research.
I do.
I like it.
I do. Yeah.
Wow, good job.
I thought it was a great picture and, just adorable. How did your folks feel? I mean, they must have been scared as hell that their kid, with this serious medical issue, like you said, you didn't know if you were going to live or not.
Right.
They must have been scared as parents. How did it come to be that, were they supportive of you drumming?
Well, it's a great question. They were, for all of the trauma relief and the fact that I could get away from kids making fun of me and all the, the stuff that goes on in your youth when you're, when things like that happen, kids can be pretty mean and the world can be a little bit mean. You go out to the real world and you walk in somewhere with your kid and, you're just walking into this new environment. First thing somebody says is, what's wrong with his eye? It can get a little harrowing.
Sure.
And so I think that, it served a purpose for them that was very comforting and they really liked, and certainly it did for me without a doubt. And then as I started to get a little older, like 12, 13 years old, I'm playing a lot of gigs, I'm putting bands together and they're watching this like, wow, like, hold on a second. This is not just something that makes them happy. Like this is bigger than that.
Yeah.
And the last thing they ever wanted was for me to be a musician full time. They did not like the lifestyle. They did not like the environments that they saw me in, even at a young age where you're playing bars and clubs and places that just were not really, I would call nice.
Yeah.
And they didn't like the hours, of course, because, you leave to go to the gig at 7:00 at night and get home at 3 or 4 in the morning. It's tough. So all of those things, they were very concerned about. And I became concerned about them too. I also became concerned about, as I got older and older, and I was still very young, right? But as I'm getting older, I'm seeing and I'm gaining wisdom that normally would have been for somebody 10 years older than me. So there's such a blessing starting early. And I started to see, like, wait a second, I started this band and it was starting to, do a little something. And then like the lead singer quits or the guitarist, gets a new girlfriend or whatever. And I saw like, wow, what's going to happen if I'm in the middle of like a real career here. I mean, now I'm a kid and, still going to grade school, but this is going to become a big problem. So I was able to see early on, like, I got to see how I can take my passion, how I can take the love that I have for music and drumming and how I can fulfill that and do what I love, but not be a full-time musician. And I really thought it was almost rhetorical. Like, okay, well, the answer to that is you can't. You got to be a full-time musician. So I was going on that. But in doing that, I was pursuing being the best drummer I could, studying with great drum teachers, Joe Morello, Alan Dawson, Louis Bellson, Lester Merle, Rod Morgenstein. And I found technology. Drumming at the time, now we're in the 80s, and drumming is starting to incorporate a lot of electronics. And you hit a drum, triggers another sound, does all kinds of things. You play the drum machine, sequences, etc. And I really got passionate about it. As I was getting more and more into it, I realized, I love technology as much or more than I love drumming. And I didn't expect that to happen at all. But I just fell in love with it. And I had a natural instinct towards it. I could learn a piece of gear without a manual in 20 minutes. And so it really was my calling. And I ended up building a career in technology, putting together studios, putting together systems and doing computer programming and sequencing and work. And remember, there was a 20-year period when I started up until about maybe 7 or 8 years ago, that the role that I had was very unique, very new and evolving. And the days of people kind of doing it all themselves was very, very rare. And the gear was not really set up for it that way. So, that was the first 2/3 of my career and life so far were doing all of those things. And then it evolved from there. I started a company, Audio One. We did more than just build recording studios and backline rigs. We put together very complex home automation systems, and still do, and home theater systems. And we have a great clientele doing that, very high end, very sophisticated, audio-one.com. And, it's just evolved from there. So it's been an incredible time to learn all these things and to have a career of it and to work with all the fascinating and extraordinary people that I have the opportunity to work with every day.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about some of those, but I can't let it pass. I mean, the dream started to shift for you from some of that experience and wisdom of, diversifying your music. But you said you had studied with Joe Morello and a couple of others. I think that needs to go back to for a second. You literally studied with Joe Morello?
I did. I was so hungry to study with Joe Morello and so driven that I started studying with him before I had a driver's license. And I would take an airplane, People's Express, which I don't know if anybody remembers that airline. You don't want to remember it. It made Southwest look like a private jet. Right. And so I was literally, you'd go to the airport, and for $25, you would take a number, and the flights left every hour from Boston, where I'm from, to Newark, where Joe was teaching in that area. And you stood in line, and you basically just waited until your number was called, and then you finally just walked on any seat you could get, and they would count the seats, and they go, okay, we can take 8 more people, and then they call 8 more people in line, and that's how I would go back and forth. And then I finally got my driver's license, and then I would drive 6 hours, take a 3-hour lesson, and drive 6 hours home. I couldn't afford a hotel. And I would just sleep in truck stops. I remember one day I was driving home. I fell asleep, and I almost hit a concrete, pillar and on a bridge, and a truck driver. I was in the median about to smash into it and die, honestly. And a truck driver beeped his horn and woke me up, and I swerved back onto the road.
Thank God.
So it was, wasn't easy. And I was studying with him and coming home. And at the time, everything would be recorded on a cassette. The lesson would be on a cassette. And I'd change cassettes on the 3-hour point, because, it was like 90-minute cassettes. So I'd have 3 or 4 cassettes, and I'd turn them over, and I'd have to listen for when it clicked and go, okay, Joe, hold on. We got to go to the next side of the cassette. And I'd put my little library of Morello lesson cassettes, and I would go home and listen to it and look at my notes and look at the book. And it was just incredible. And it was so impactful and so life-changing in terms of how much he helped me improve as a drummer, that when I met Dom Famularo and I realized in fairly short order what he taught and how he learned his craft and how he really legitimately blends Morello with Chapin, with Stone, with Moeller, with Shelly Manne, with Gladstone. He's such a Renaissance man. And it's so unbelievably and incredible that I was dying to do it, because I stopped studying with Joe when my technology career was taking off. And I really stopped before I got into a lot of things I wanted to learn, but I just didn't have the time to do it and the need at the time, because I had to make a living, and there's only so many hours in a day. And now at this point, I can carve out a little time to practice every day and kind of do some things that nourish me and my spirit. And playing and learning the drums and being better at them is one of them. And Joe Morello's passed on. And I'm like, well, I want to study with Joe Morello again. I want to call up Joe. Let's pick up where we left off. Let's go. We'll do it over Skype. I'll fly to New Jersey again if I have to, whatever we got to do. Sure. And here's Dom Famularo, who's all of that plus these other techniques. Right. And he is just really single-handedly changing the face of drum education. Right. And I can speak personally from what he's teaching me, and you can speak to it for sure because he's teaching you as well, that this is really the real deal. And this is something that is groundbreaking, because I really am picking up where I left off with Joe Morello. And I'm having the time of my life. It's a game changer, man. It's a game changer.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and Dom is certainly so inspirational, drumming and life-wise. If you had to put it in a nutshell, David, what would you say the biggest lessons, the biggest thing you got from Joe Morello?
Oh man, lots of things, but I think that the natural movement of drumming, when everybody talks about don't tense up, and they use a lot of buzzwords and they use a lot of concepts, but they don't ever really give you the data to back it up so you can truly apply it and play that way. And Joe Morello does. He does apply it and play that way, and did, and now Dom does. So I think natural drumming is so huge because it'll allow you to play for your whole life and avoid injury, which is one of the number one things that stops a lot of us drummers from continuing our drumming is physical issues from drumming and not knowing how to have the muscles work for us as opposed to hurt us or be hurt. And I think that I also learned, I got a lot of life lessons from Joe on the fly. Like Dom teaches very methodical, and, he's a master teacher. Joe was a master teacher, but not in a methodical way. Joe was a master teacher. It's like I almost had to guide him a little bit, and he would just give you these tidbits that were gold on the fly. And I remember him saying to me once, when you're putting your set together, or you're doing set, meaning music set, not drum set, not setting it up, but actually like a musical, arrangement of songs.
Yes.
He would say, when you're putting your set together, or any kind of presentation, anything that you're out there, you're playing with, and you got a band, or you're doing your own solo show, he goes, always remember to end with the drum solo, because you can't follow anything with a drum solo. Maybe you can do a song or two to close the night out, but that's about it. Well, that seems like common sense, but it was really insightful, because a lot of times I would put the solo at the beginning or the middle. And I remember seeing Van Halen all the time, and Alex usually soloed in the first or second or third song. That was pretty common when I saw them live. He would solo early. But Joe was right. Like when you see like Carl Palmer, as I said, my favorite drummer and a big inspiration. He always solos at the end. Buddy always soloed at the end. Louis always soloed at the end. I see Dave Weckl. I happened to just see him recently. He solos at the end. So it's his advice. I mean, this is in 1985 or something, and his advice is still as relevant and helpful as it was then. So we've got natural movement, how to make the physics of drumsticks and drumming work for you and with you, how to put sticks and rhythm in motion and have it continue in motion while you generate the ideas, you generate the accents, you generate how you want to say it musically, but the physical nature of it is done through natural movement and physics. And I think that that's a really important thing to learn. And, I'm glad that Joe, I'm really blessed I had the opportunity to study with him, and now with Dom.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I love talking with drummers, David, too, all musicians, but drummers especially, because I am one. And, we all have our different influences, and I love talking with folks about their guy or their guys, or women drummers as well. But say more about Carl Palmer and why he's your guy for you.
Well, Carl Palmer was really the first drummer that I heard in rock that blew my mind and connected with me. I was listening to the Beatles. I was listening to Zeppelin. I was listening to The Who, early Cheap Trick, Queen, AC/DC, early stuff. This is 77, 76, even 75, really early in a lot of these bands. And the music was captivating to me. I was a huge Kiss fan. I was listening to, Kiss Alive and Destroyer, and the music, the image, the attitude, so much of it was connecting with me. And then, but the drumming, the great thing about the drumming is I was learning to play a lot of that drumming. And so that was very fulfilling. Like, I love the song. I love playing to it. I love learning the parts, and it was accessible. Even though there were a lot of really cool nuances, a lot of that stuff I could learn to play. And then when I saw the ELP Live album, and it was around 75, 76, whenever it was, and I saw the back of the record, and I saw this giant single-headed concert tom monstrosity. I'd never seen anything like it. It was the most unique, incredible drum kit ever. And I heard the playing on it, which was even more incredible. And Carl was just like a Buddy Rich of rock. And I had heard Buddy, and I saw Buddy first. I saw Buddy many times, but the first time I saw him was I was around 8 or 9 years old. He came to play my high school. So we were able to go to the show because it was all ages. It was in the afternoon, and my brother and parents could take me, and it wasn't a nightclub or anything. So I went to my high school auditorium, saw Buddy Rich. I didn't know if I wanted to quit or keep practicing. You know, same thing everybody says after they see Buddy for the first time.
That's amazing.
And so I hear this Emerson, Lake and Palmer record, and I start checking them out more and listening to other stuff and hearing even what Carl was doing in Lucky Man, their first big hit from 1970, which I hadn't heard. Obviously, I was 3 years old or whatever at the time. So a few years later, now I'm going back catalog and kind of checking everything out because I'm inspired. And I'm just listening to one amazing drum part after the next. And I couldn't play any of that stuff. So I was like, this is incredible. And I was just very inspired. And the rest is history. I've got a lot of amazing Carl Palmer moments that have happened since then. And between the drum kit and the book and doing a DVD with Carl, drumming on stage with Carl. I was at his master class recently in Philadelphia. It was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I just saw a picture of you on the panel with him.
Yep. Right? And amazing. The master class, I have to tell you, it was so great. I can't wait for next year's. Everybody needs to attend this. It is so, if you play music, drums, keys, guitar, bass, vocals, any of those instruments, you got to come to this. It's really just, it was incredible. And so, you know, it's amazing how sometimes our idols and icons can become friends and partners. And I'm
pretty awesome.
Blessed. You know, I'm just blessed. I think all the hard work, you know, has just given me some blessings and given me these opportunities to do some new things with iconic idols.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, you've worked with some of my other music heroes as well. When your technology and the engineering stuff started to take off, I mean, you know, some of my top bands, Aerosmith and Kiss, you have worked with. How did you connect with them? And how did your being a musician help you in those situations?
Connecting with them was through networking, getting an initial opportunity where somebody referred me, and then I was able to, you know, get a gig and then turn that into more gigs. You know, you got to come through and you get an opportunity. Everybody says he's lucky, he's lucky, he's lucky. Luck is when hard work meets opportunity and you're ready for it. And then there is some luck in there, but luck alone will not get you very far. So I think that was really how I was able to, you know, build upon my career. And being a musician, without a doubt, has really served me. I mean, first of all, it's so much more enjoyable to know music, understand music, and be able to follow it and really get deep inside of it. And if somebody says, hey, let's take it from, you know, 3 measures into the bridge, like, you know exactly what they're talking about, and you're not trying to translate, oh, what's the musical equivalent to that, you know. So being a musician, being trained, reading music, having been in an orchestra as I was several times, including the Greater Boston Youth Symphony, you know, that all that stuff really did wonders for me. I went to New England Conservatory for a couple of years. So being able to read and understand music theory and understand music at that level has been very, very beneficial. And I'm really glad. I didn't understand it then, how much it would help me. Sometimes I'd be learning these things and I would say, I don't want to be a music teacher. This is a waste of time. And some of it was a waste of time because I'm not going to be a music teacher. But a lot of it applies to all music and was very helpful for me to build on my career and understand all the music that goes into technology. Because remember, if I'm putting together music programs and I'm editing and I'm mixing and programming. It's all music. Whether you read the music or you don't, it's still 4 beats to a bar, 4/4 time signature in most cases, a certain key that the music is in for the song, all of these basics, like every song, all styles of music. And when you really understand all of that, it helps you a lot. And it's even helped me in my home automation and home theater side of the business, because when you create a mix and then you build a home theater for somebody that's reference quality, or recording studios, as I love to do and have done many times, it's reference quality. When you finish the studio and you're tweaking it, or the theater, and you're making your adjustments, you got to listen to something, right? That's the whole point. You got to listen, like, okay, how's the studio playing back? How's the theater playing back? And that's something that you're listening to. For me, it's reference material that in some cases I actually helped create. So my point of reference to, like, okay, how close is this room to where I want it to be? It's a fairly unique point of reference that I'm able to bring to it, and then dial it in and really nail what it's going to sound like. And I think that's what's resonated with a lot of clients to where they hire me and recommend me, because they say, well, he got great results and he did it very smoothly. He knew what he was doing. He had a plan. He executed it. And, that's who we want to hire.
And so can you share a story or two from working with Aerosmith and Kiss and or Ozzy, and what specifically are some of the projects you've worked with them on, please?
Well, Aerosmith, I started with them right after they finished Pump, and worked with them on, I was their pre-production engineer for years, all through the 90s, Get a Grip and Just Push Play and 9 Lives and all these different albums and amusement park rides and pinball machines and movie edits and live albums and backline rigs and recording rigs, and built studios for them, home theaters and automation systems for them, worked on the records, did about 7 records, from Love in an Elevator to Just Push Play. And Ozzy, I built 2 studios for him. And during the first studio build, which was in his house in Beverly Hills, they were filming the show The Osbournes, so I ended up on a bunch of those episodes. And that was an absolute blast. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I'll never forget. And then that studio was used on some records of his, and I did some engineering on one of them. And I've always kind of worn multiple hats. So, like, I can build the studio, I can run the studio, I can integrate the studio, I can then, when the studio's done and you're working, I can go in the house and get all the theater and automation stuff going. And so it's kind of a 360 approach to, music and technology. And then I have my artist development firm, All Access IDA, where we do high-level artist development for artists. And so it's very fulfilling. And there's a lot of different elements from it. So it's always interesting, and you're always learning one thing and applying it to another.
Did that tech stuff just come naturally to you, David? Because I know like musical talent can be almost genetic or hereditary, somebody's parents or family members. But, this sounds like a natural ability for you, that you can do all of this.
I think it's been. I've worked really hard at it, but I think a lot of it was very natural. Yeah. I think it probably comes even more naturally than drumming for me.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously you're doing well with it. Steven Tyler calls you Gyro Gear Loose. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, forever, since the first day I met him.
Tell me about that nickname.
He started calling me, well, he first met me. He said, I'm going to call you Gyro Gear Loose. No, I'm going to call you Swervo Gizmo. No, I'm going to call you Gyro Gear Loose. And Gyro Gear Loose stuck. And to this day, when he calls or texts me on his phone, it says Gyro instead of my actual name, David Frangioni. So it's stuck. And I don't know where he came up with it. I thought at one point somebody said it was in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but I don't know if that's true or not. I've never taken the time to look, but it's been my nickname with him for 30 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. And were you connecting with them? They were past their Boston days at this point, if it was Pump, right? That was their huge comeback at that point.
Yeah, it was the comeback time. They were clean and sober.
Yeah.
They were on their second record with Bruce Fairbairn. The first one was Permanent Vacation. They got re-signed to Geffen. They did Done with Mirrors when they got back together. and it didn't commercially fare very well. So that John Kalodner, their A&R guy at the time, with Geffen, put them with Bruce Fairbairn and some co-writers like Jim Vallance and Desmond Child. And they went on and did that great album, Permanent Vacation. Then they did Pump, which was, to me, is a landmark rock album.
No question.
And then I came on board near the end of that and helped them put together some sounds and technology for additional songs and the tour itself. And then that transitioned back into when they started working on the songwriting for Get a Grip. They needed a studio. They needed a guy to sit there every day and make sure that all of the equipment was running and that they had the opportunity where they could just focus on writing and creating. So I became like the one-man show. And I would sit in the studio every day, and I watched all these iconic songwriters come in and out and work on songs like Crazy and Crying and Amazing.
Wow.
And, just
that must have been awesome.
Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees. I mean, just on and on and on. Walk on Water, Blind Man. Just incredible songs.
Yeah,
and
great songs.
Got to be friends with and work on a lot of projects with other writers and artists that I met that were coming through. So yeah, I still work with Desmond Child to this day. And just Mark Hudson and just iconic artists.
Amazing. And how many times have you gotten to play drums with Joey Kraemer, by the way?
Not as many as you think.
No.
I built a studio for him.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time with them. But, there were only a couple of times where there were like 2 drum kits set up, or, same thing with Steven or Joe, where I'll play and one of them will jam out on it. Those days, it's amazing how many of them there were, but they go by so fast, and there's so much to do that they just blur together. And then all of a sudden the album's done, but each day getting there was, climbing another little mountain.
Yeah. And with Kiss, I want to hear what projects did you work on with Kiss, please?
Well, I did remixed Kiss the Second Coming into surround sound. And then we've worked on some specialty projects. I just got off the Kiss cruise. Modern Drummer sponsored the Kiss Drum Off. And we did this really cool thing where we had all these drummers come on the Kiss cruise and do an old-fashioned drum off. And the winner's going to get featured on the Modern Drummer Digital. And a 13-year-old drummer from LA won the drum off. And just, those guys are so great. Doc McGee's their manager, iconic businessman and music man. Of course, Gene Paul, Eric Tommy, just a lot of Eric Singer wrote the afterword for my book, and
it's amazing.
Always projects going on.
I don't know how you find time for all of this, David. You got so much going on with this, and you've got some other, the Frangioni Foundation, Hit the Deck, Drum Experience, the Irie Foundation, and Musicians on Call. I was just tired, just seeing all of this. I'm like, how do you find the energy to do all of that?
And appear on podcasts in my spare time.
Exactly.
The fact is that you just being time efficient. There's a lot more time to do things than you think. You just got to schedule it out, be very committed.
Yeah, and clearly you're very passionate about all of these things. The other thing that I wanted to, that I hadn't realized until I looked more into it, an organization that I've featured on my show before as well is the Can-Do Muses. Can you talk a little bit about Can-Do Muses, please?
Oh, well, Dom Famularo turned me on to that. And that's why I joined that. They haven't reached out to me to really be actively involved in very much right now, but I did tell my story on it, and I did find it to be something that I think they're up to a lot of great things. Frangioni Foundation, which you can learn more about at frangionifoundation.com. We're a foundation that we not only do our own programming and curriculum, but we work with other foundations. So when you mentioned Irie, Musicians on Call, Guitars Over Guns, Jason Taylor Foundation, Little Dreams Foundation, which is Oriana and Phil Collins, which I was their musical director for a few years. All of these foundations, we provide the drumming. Make-A-Wish, we provide the drumming to that. So it's very possible that in the future, that foundation will reach out to us, Can-Do, and we'll collaborate. But, they're doing some great things, that's for sure. That's why I joined up.
Right. Yeah. And with the book Crash, I was curious too, is there anybody's drum set or even in the museum that that you had wanted to be in the book but weren't able to get, or another sort of dream kit that you'd love to have for the museum?
Well, there's lots, right? I mean, with drummers and drumming, as you know, there's like that T-shirt that has 400 drums on the front, and the big tag at the top is just one more drum. You know, how many more drums do you need? Just one more drum.
That's right.
But the fact is that the dream kit and the kit that drove the whole project and that was inspirational to me for my entire life is the Carl Palmer stainless steel kit that's on the cover. I am 8 years old. I see the back of the album. I see the kit. I hear the drumming. I hear the sound of the drums, which I also thought was very unique and incredible. And I dreamt of that kit. I would look as a kid, because remember, there's no YouTube, no internet. The only way you could see the drum kit is if it popped up in a magazine or you saw it on an album. And ELP did some albums, but they didn't put a picture of the drum kit on very many of them. In fact, I'm only aware of that drum kit being on 2 albums. The live one I saw, which was a long, blurry shot. You really couldn't see much about the kit other than, you know, the grandiosity of it and a little bit of detail. And then on Works Volume 2, there's a picture of Carl next to the kit. And you can see the back right of the kit. So the left, as you're looking at it from the front, you can see a couple of the floor toms and side toms and the engravings, and you can get an idea of it there. And it was just always so extraordinary. And I dreamt of that kit. And I remember telling my parents, I got to have this drum kit. And they're like, David, please, you know, he's a wealthy rock star in London. You're an up and coming one-eyed kid in Arlington. We barely can, you know, put food on the table and keep our jobs. And you're worrying about some grandiose rock star drum kit. Like, you're out. Yeah. They just thought I had rocks in my head. And then as we go on, then Carl, when ELP broke up, Carl was going to auction the kit off, but instead he sold it to Ringo Starr, who bought it for his son, Zach. Well, then my parents loved to rib me. Like, yeah, now you're really going to get the drum kit. The richest drummer in the world just bought it. So now if it happened to be unattainable up until now it's really unattainable. Like, just forget it. If we sold everything we had times 100, we couldn't touch what Ringo would want for it. So it just was out of reach. As the years went on, I would always kind of keep my ear to the ground. I actually ended up working with Ringo for a few years. I built studios for him and did some projects which were really, you know, incredible to be a part of that. And I inquired as to whether I could buy the drum kit at that time. I was in a much better place in my career. I didn't have any idea what it was worth, but I just, you know, was so into it that I wanted to find out. And it just came back through his team, like, no, you know, forget about the drum kit. I think it happened to be that it had been in storage. Ringo wasn't even thinking about it. And he was probably thinking, well, Zach might still want it. You know, like, I don't need to sell the drum kit. So then we fast forward to 2015. Right? So what are we, 40 years from, we're 40 years from the first time I see the drum kit.
I love it.
On the album cover. And I find out that Ringo Starr is auctioning off the drum kit from Julian's auction.
Wow.
So I call Darren Julian when I find this out, because the auction hasn't even been announced yet. I find out through Ringo's world, right? So I call Darren. And I go, is this true? Do you have Carl Palmer's drum kit from Ringo? And he goes, yeah, it's going to be in our auction. I said, Darren, let me tell you the story. I start with, you know, about my eye, my childhood, my trauma, my parents, you know, every single heartstring I'm pulling. And Darren finishes listening to the story. He's such a great guy. I love Darren. Genius auctioneer and collector's, you know, expert. And he finishes listening to my story, and I go, he goes, David, that is the most unbelievable story I've ever heard in my life. And he goes, you have to have this drum kit. And I go, yes, that's exactly what I think too. So we'll make a deal. He goes, no, I'll give you a bidder number. So I'm like, right. I was like going crazy, right? The anxiety of that. I'm just thinking, oh no, you know, I'm done. What if somebody, you know, rich bids on the thing? I'm done. And so it turns out that the auction came, and Ringo had multiple drum kits he was selling. That was the only one that wasn't his, that he owned it, but it wasn't a Ringo Starr drum kit.
Right.
But one of the kits the kit he played on Ed Sullivan sold, and it was before Carl Palmer's kit came to the auction block, right? Because, in an auction, they're numbered and they go one after the other, of course. So his Sullivan kit was first, and it sold for over $2 million. Wow. To the owner of the Colts, who is rich.
Yes, Jim Irsay, right?
Jim Irsay. Yeah. And so he bought the thing, and I just remember calling Julian's freaking out. Is he going to bid on the ELP kit? They're like, calm down. We can't tell you that. And so I'm like, oh. So it was, to me, it represented more than an item. At the end of the day, it's an item, and an item only has so much significance, right? No matter what. It just had so many memories and moments that I had around it. So the item itself just was an item, but the memories that were personal to my life and my achievements and overcoming a lot of odds along the way, that was associated with the kit in a very unique way. And of course, Carl's playing. So this was just one giant bundle of inspiration that I really wanted to bring home. And it was before the book and before the museum. So it was just, in this moment. So the auction comes and I win the auction.
It's amazing.
And I'm looking up at the sky after I won it, about to cry. My mom had passed away in 2004, my dad in 96. And I'm just saying to them, can you believe this? And from that, of course, my collaborations with Carl Palmer himself, having now studied with him, gone to his master class, drummed on stage with him, co-produced and co-mixed a DVD that's out, that's Carl Palmer's ELP Legacy DVD that I'm drumming on and that I mixed with Carl. And now doing other collaborations with Carl and his great manager, Bruce Pilato. It's just a dream come true. He's as extraordinary of a person as he is a drummer and inspiration. And look at what he's doing for people. Look at the legacy he's leaving. Yeah. To take the time out to do a master class, right? And to say, okay, I'm going to leave my legacy and some of the things I've learned with generations to come. He doesn't have to do that.
Right.
But he's doing it. And he's creating something much bigger, just like he did with all the bands that he's been a huge part of, that they'll be with us for eternity. He's doing the same thing, helping musicians now too. So to be a part of that in any way is incredible. And then that kit, from inspiring me those 40 years, it inspired the book, it inspired the foundation, it inspired the museum. This thing is just incredible.
Man, you're living the dream. That's a boyhood dream come true, David. That's fantastic. What is it like to sit behind that kit and play it?
I wouldn't know. I've never played it. No, I'm kidding.
Just left it in the garage, right?
Yeah, right. Well, it's still in cases. It's extraordinary. And, I wish I could make it sound even 1/10 of the way it sounded when I heard it with Carl. But, that's why we practice.
Right. Amazing story. Thank you for sharing that. That's fantastic. David, you've got a lot of good works in the world that you're doing for folks. Check it out online. Where can folks find you, David?
Well, my socials are at David Frangioni, Frangioni. And davidjfrangioni.com is my website. Thank you for the opportunity to share my stories. I hope that a lot of people out there can find their own story in our story, because I think there's a lot of people out there that have very similar lives in, having dreams and goals and setbacks and ailments, and take what what you've taken from me today and hopefully apply it to your own world and make it better.
Overcoming challenges and having a lot of success still in the music business. Thank you so much, David Frangioni, for being on the record today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone.